Today we're going to do something a little bit different. For the launch of season 3 of the Leaders Room, we have Michael Lohan with us, who is CEO of IDA Ireland, who are actually our partners on this podcast. Michael, it's brilliant to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Anne. I'm delighted to be here and obviously to be part of season 3, because the first 2 seasons I think have been really impactful. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, the feedback has been wonderful, I have to say. So we're excited now to get cracking on season 3. And it's a very appropriate way to start to kick off this season, I think. So you just recently launched your new strategy, so I'm going to come back to that. But I'd love to kick off by finding out a little bit about the man behind the title. So you're CEO of IDA Ireland, but would you mind telling us a little bit about your own background and how you got to here?
Yeah, well, I can certainly tell you about the background. I'm not sure how I got here, but that's maybe a different story. But my background is I'm an engineering graduate. I hail from Cloon in County Leitrim, a small village, a village where I still live actually today, despite the fact that my role takes me across the globe. And as I said, growing up, I'm one of a small family of 3. Dad was a farmer and still is a farmer in his 80s today, which is really important. And Mum was a homemaker effectively, and we were the first generation, I think, in our family to get the opportunity to go to 3rd level. Dad actually, who's as I mentioned, is over 80 at this stage. He actually got a scholarship at the time to continue, but couldn't because of the necessity. He was the oldest in the family, and he went to work. But we were fortunate, I think, that education was always part of our upbringing, and it was a case you come home at the evening time and the first priority was homework. Right? Whether we liked it or not, that was the first priority. And I think that stands, to us in terms of it gives us opportunities that our parents didn't have. And I think, in some ways, that's incumbent in all of us as well, to make sure we can help to bring that. And so from that, I went in to do engineering. I'd done electronic engineering, pure play electronics, studied in Sligo and then went on to Galway. Subsequently done my master's in Galway as well, in the university in Galway. So it's and it's been a journey, because my career started actually, and I've learned so much in my career actually, is that I started in the electronics industry in the sort of the late 90s. Built up my career in the early stages, moved to a large multinational. Actually, I worked in a multinational. Seen what it was to be within a multinational, and in some ways the politics that takes place in the multinational, which was probably new to me as a young engineer coming through. And then of course I also had at that point actually we had the .com crash, which I sometimes try and explain to people here in work and others, and they look at me and say, when did that happen exactly? And that was in the early 2000s. So, I remember it well. Yeah, and I remember because I ended up not having a job effectively, and and that brings a very different perspective to your life as well. And when you have at that stage just married with two kids under 2. And to be in that situation at that point in time, but you learn through all of that. It's not a case of saying that this is it's a shock at the time, and I understand that, and I understand that very much. But it's about how you actually can look forward and what that looks like. So that's my sort of background from that, and from that actually, I suppose from that, if you call it almost shock of losing my job. I took a job for a year actually in a sector that I had no connection with, actually in the construction sector, where I was doing project management and so forth. So I had no direct connection with it. And then I was fortunate, a job was advertised in IDA. I got done the interview, got into IDA, and 23 or 22 years later, 5 careers within IDA, and I'm now CEO. So that journey has certainly been a different chapter in my life as well.
Wow, that's so interesting. And my gosh, you must have learned a lot in the various roles coming up through IDA as well. And I suppose from that point of view, I'd love to get a sense of what does a good leader look like to you? What do you think leadership should look like? Good leadership.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I think it's a very difficult question to answer as well, because I think leadership looks like different things at different parts of your life. From my perspective, and maybe I'll give you that in that context. So, but ultimately, as I reflect today, and I'm in the position I am today, and I think about what do I want to be and what's my leadership and style, and it's not just about style, it's actually what you actually do in my context. It's substance. Absolutely, and it's how you behave on a day-to-day basis. So I probably put in a few different areas. You can read all of the literature and it'll tell you the top 5 things and the top 10 things and the top 12 things, and you're not sure how many top things there are when you're finished, but it comes down to a few things. I think first of all it comes down to being true to yourself, number one. Secondly, it's about having trust. The trust actually of the people you work with and the team that you're leading, and for me as CEO of IDA, that's so critically important, because the work we do it requires trust, it requires empowerment, and to make sure that as a leader you can provide that opportunity for people to be empowered and for people to develop as well. Of course, it also requires strong communication and clear communication and constant communication, despite, and this is something that I learn and continuously learn, I think, is that it's a journey of learning, probably of making mistakes along the way, but actually taking those and actually turning them into future learnings, and you have to be inquisitive as well. So there's many things in leadership that are so critically important, but I would bring it back to be authentic to yourself, be a good listener and be available to people. I think that's so critically important. That helps to build trust. Don't be afraid to communicate, and communicate maybe the tough decisions as well, because not every decision not everyone will understand the reasons behind every decision, or may not get the full picture, and that's why it's important, I think, to have the trust of an organisation that you're making those decisions for the right purpose, and then help people to actually achieve, recognise people for what to do, because ultimately leadership is about getting the best out of everyone. It's not about one person or the person that's leading an organisation. To my mind, it's about the entire organisation. So there are some of the key elements that I see from a leadership perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, you're a leader at a fairly difficult time. I think we were discussing it earlier. They're kind of uncertain times, everything from geopolitical turmoil to, protectionism, to you name it. Like, I'm very interested to know, what your own attitude and what the attitude of the IDA is as regards getting on with the day job in such a climate.
One other thing I suppose I should have mentioned as well in terms of leadership, you have to, it's almost paradoxical, you have to be comfortable with change, but you have to give stability and certainty. And I think that's what I need to do, and that's what we're doing in the organisation is. So we need to focus on the controllables, and we need to be aware of the elements that's outside of that, and be able to adapt and adopt to those elements as required. And from an IDA perspective, and you mentioned earlier in terms of our new strategy, so that's really our focus point, is around that strategy. So we have a clear view and strategy of how we're going to move the organisation forward. Because remember, we've just launched our strategy. It was developed against a backdrop which is now coming into being in terms of protectionism, of a change in industrial policy, and indeed in terms of competitiveness and what that means. And for IDA, we have sort of 4 central themes within our strategy. One is about strengthening our current long-term investment. So in some ways it's make sure we protect what we have, and let's add to that in terms of value creation. The second area then is the whole area of innovation, RD&I, and research and innovation, and strengthening and deepening that. And we have a strong commitment in terms of building that capacity within the client base and within the economy as a whole. The third area then is actually the area of driving sustainable change. So critically important, real opportunity in terms of not just in terms of renewable energy, but also in terms of new technology and what that means for the Irish economy. And of course the fourth area that's so critically important for Ireland is balanced regional development. And as someone who comes from the west of Ireland, the northwest of Ireland, that's so critically important that we continue to build those clusters of excellence around the country. And enshrined around all of those 4 key areas then is how we as an organisation are going to collaborate, how we're going to influence, and how we're going to evolve ourselves in terms of our own skills and needs as well. And as we go forward, in some ways it's those external elements, because we can control the 4 elements in the middle, because we work with our clients and we have a strong relationship, so we can influence that and manage that quite well. The external elements of influencing, of collaboration. In today's world, it never has become more important. And in some ways, I think those external elements are the areas that we have to continue to build capacity, capability, and to bring forth, I suppose, a collaborative response to the trade world that we're seeing evolve in front of us at the moment.
Yeah, and if I can come back to the strategy as well, if you don't mind, because it's interesting that you had that in mind when you were developing the strategy already. But I was very interested in kind of the sectors you were looking at, particularly as well. I think there's sectors probably where we have a lot of strength already, but they're also really important sectors. So you might tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So I think across those 4 areas that I talked about, we see those embedding and supporting our existing sectors. So those sectors, whether it's technology, whether you're a large platform or in the semiconductor space or in between, in life sciences, like we're very fortunate, and I know it's quite topical in today's conversations, but we're very fortunate in Ireland that we have built a competency in high value regulated industries such as life sciences, the biopharma industry and the medical device industry, and indeed a strong indigenous industry in healthcare in particular as well. The third area of international financial services, and that crossover with technology, fintech, AI, so critically important, and we're seeing great growth in that area. And then the fourth sector, of course, that we're very strong in, and we see further opportunity, is that advanced engineering, high value manufacturing, and that's going to actually spill over into the green economy and adjacency of the green economy. So they're the key sectors that we see Ireland continuing to I suppose bring value to international markets, and indeed that we have the capability here to actually exploit those new technologies as they come forward.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and it fits in with the regional as well in a funny way. Like there really are clusters of very strong groups of companies in different parts of Ireland where
there are, and I think it's and they can be tier one, OEM suppliers, and they can be significant supply chain partners within it, and of course as well, which is so critically important for the Irish economy, is that spillover into and building a strong supply chain of indigenous companies supporting that and indigenous services supporting it. So you really see that, and I think, like, I'm fortunate, as I mentioned, I'm over 20 years in IDA. I've seen the evolution of different parts of our landscape. The west coast of Ireland is very different today than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and that's because of the value of knowledge creation, of bringing industry, of high value jobs, and the spillover that happens in those areas. And we have to continue to see that, because ultimately the world has got smaller actually in that period. And we need to be conscious of that. And as an open economy and a small open economy, we have to maintain, I think, our ability to be agile. And that's something, again, that our strategy calls out, is that we have to focus on the areas where we can bring change and what's going to drive that. And that's our carrying capacity, our infrastructure, our skills, and our policies. They're all within our control, and that's certainly something that we in IDA would be very focused on, as indeed the programme for government reflects as well.
Yeah, and the skills element is so important, isn't it? And it's something that I hear over and over again when I'm talking to other people as well, like the talent is here in Ireland, and we have to keep building it up.
We do, and in my engagement with client companies in every part of the world, they speak to the talent. That's the one thing that they universally speak to in Ireland is, yes, we have pro-enterprise policies, but they will, all of them, speak to the quality of the talent that's in Ireland, the availability, the adaptability of that talent, and the certainty that they get in terms of Ireland as a location where you can push, let's call it, complex products or services, and the Irish operations will deliver. And I think that's something that we need to celebrate, number one, right? But secondly, that we need to make sure we protect and we enhance. And that's clearly what's at the very core of our strategy.
Yeah, and it fits into one of my last questions, really, in a way, and that is how do we remain? Like, I mean, we have an incredible record on foreign direct investment, and thanks in large part to the IDA. But how do we retain that competitiveness now, and what are the challenges? And I think we've spoken about some of the real pluses, which I agree with you. I think the talent reputation is very powerful. What are the kind of the competitive challenges now ahead? For what do we need to concentrate on that we don't become complacent?
Yeah, so I think, but there are great opportunities ahead, right? So I think what we have to do is first of all, is we can't get distracted by everything that's happening in the broader environment at the moment. And because ultimately, yes, there may well be change, but it may not be what we think it's going to be. And at this juncture, going back to what I said earlier, we need to be comfortable with a level of uncertainty so that we can focus on what's within our control and how we can manage. And for us in IDA, that's what we're going to do. At some levels, I'm comfortable with levels of uncertainty, and it's important because that means we need to be able to focus on what we can deliver on. And where does that look like? As part of our strategy, we've identified 4 key drivers, global drivers, and actually drivers for the Irish economy. The first one is AI and digitalisation, real opportunity. And it's a driver not just in terms of the investment that could come here in terms of digital infrastructure, the engineering that goes around that, but it's also a driver in terms of how we can change the narrative for research and innovation, maybe new products and services. So it has multiple facets of what it can achieve, and indeed productivity. So that's one key driver. The second key driver is the area of semiconductors, because as the world continues, to digitise, semiconductors is the key component of that. And Ireland is centrally positioned to support that, not just for Europe, but for the globe as well. The third area then is the whole area of sustainability. And I think that's a real growth opportunity. Yes, we have the offshore wind potential in Ireland, but we have so much more that can happen in terms of supply chain, in terms of new technology, and indeed in terms of decarbonising of our current enterprise base. And the fourth key driver that we've identified then is the area of healthcare. And healthcare, not just in the traditional model of medical device and pharmaceuticals, but also coupled with that is technology, is personalised health, digital health. All of those areas are so critically important. So we have lots of areas of opportunity. These are areas of opportunity that align to the core competencies of Ireland, and to the skill base that we have here, to the research base that we built here. So they're real areas of opportunities. And yes, we have to make sure our enabling conditions are correct. And that's why, we're a strong advocate for increasing the capacity of our electrical supply and our grid, in terms of water and wastewater, in terms of housing. And we also need to remain agile in terms of our policies. And in some ways, our strategy is titled Adapt Intelligently. And, you have to say that's so critically important, because we're going to have to adapt. We're going to have to do that in a thoughtful manner. And I believe we can, because we've been through challenges before. We've been through churn and change before. And if there's one country in the world that can do change well, I think it's Ireland. And what we need to do is make sure we don't forget that against the backdrop of all the conversation that's happening. Because I'm in a very privileged position to be CEO of IDA, but also to be able to work with the world's best companies, the world's best leaders, and that they have chosen Ireland and they see Ireland as central to their platforms. I think the future for Ireland is certainly positive, notwithstanding we have challenges, but we will rise to those challenges.
Oh my gosh, that's a lovely positive note, I think, to end on. I think we should stop there. I love it. I love the idea of the agility, because I think that's exactly what we all need at the moment as well, and the intelligent adaptability, is that
yeah,
right?
adapt intelligently.
Adapt intelligently, sorry, I got that the wrong way around. So, Michael, very best of luck in the coming years now and with all of that, and thank you so much for coming in and talking to us today. It was just fascinating to hear where it's all going.
Perfect, thank you, and I appreciate it, and thanks for all of your support as well, so really appreciate it.
Thanks a million, Michael. Thank you.